Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Matt Reynolds, editor of Packaging World Magazine, and I'm here with Paul Jenkins, managing director of the PackHub.
A new area to explore, which is around sort of bioplastic wraps and packaging formats. So this is a German-based supermarket chain called Norma, and they're moving their own label, Excelsior Magic du Chocolat premium chocolate range, to a bioplastic wrapper. Now, we've seen quite a few confectionery and chocolate brands go down this route. The new packs will use the cellulose-based Natureflex, which you may have heard of from Futamura. And Natureflex is designed to be a direct replacement for fossil-based plastics and can be processed using the same form, fill, and seal equipment. As Natureflex is a bioplastic, it does not need to be disposed of in the plastic waste stream. Rather, it can be safely recycled in a household composter. Natureflex is said to have a number of properties suitable for confectionery applications. So long gone are the days where there's a sort of a big compromise in terms of functional performance. So it's got high water vapor, gas and aroma barrier performance, strong seals, apparent excellent printability on pack, including gloss and clarity. So the new packaging will be used on a range of the brand's products for their 100-gram bars in the German market. And indeed, Norma have stores across Germany, Austria, France, and the Czech Republic. So a really good example of bioplastic packaging being applied to a German chocolate brand.
Okay, good. Now, bioplastic material is really on trend and important, but I wanted to take a brief detour here back to a paper product, and that's Ballisto. And what was important, Paul and I spoke offline, the previous pack was able they were able to use existing equipment in, basically flow wrappers and so on that were already in use, and switch over to a different film material and still use, with some tinkering and retrofits, I'm sure, they were able to use the same equipment to put that chocolate into a completely different style of film. This is another case of that is Ballisto. They decided the traditional film flow wrapper. This is still flow wrapped on the same machines, but they went to a paper packaging. So imagine the difference in material handling for a machine between paper and traditional film wrapper. So I felt like this was a good opportunity for a quick detour to think upstream that these brands and the OEMs that are selling to these brands, they're not necessarily going to be capable of running the new material in a one-to-one type of exact replacement. There needs to be some sort of retrofit, and most brands aren't going to want to be doing the capital expenditures to buy a whole new $1 million piece of equipment to make these changes. So it's important to know, in the case of Ballisto, it's Mars Wrigley. They worked with their longtime supplier Syntagon, formerly Bosch Packaging, to be able to add on a retrofit to existing machineries to be able to put that, the existing chocolate into a whole new different flow wrap pack without major equipment outlays. So just wanted to take a quick brief detour there back to the compostable materials. In this case, this is on the right. We have Arbor Teas. They've moved to a backyard compostable material that's also using the Futamura material, Natureflex. In this case, they were really happy with an existing pack that did the job well, but they noticed that over time, as it sat on shelf in retail situations, there would be some degradation of the pack, and then you would end up with a more brittle pack that didn't work so well with the teas. And often, depending on the types of teas that they had, some might sell more quickly than others. So they actually worked with the brands Eagle Flexible Packaging, Futamura, and Polycar together to put together a multi-layer material that is still backyard compostable. So they're using different types of inks and sealants and so on that allow this to look beautiful and stay on shelf and still be radiant on shelf for quite a bit of time without any degradation on shelf. But then still, as soon as you use the tea within, you can still have that certified, it's backyard compostable. So along the lines of bioplastic material, this I think was a big win for Arbor Teas in Michigan.
Absolutely, very good examples there. So recycled packaging and recycled content, a bit of context here. Of all the innovations that we're tracking in the PackHub's Innovation Zone platform, we track over 1,000 a year, and a majority are either to do with improved recyclability or increased recycled content. And I mentioned earlier about many brands, retailers and packaging suppliers working to this 2025 self-imposed directive of 100% recycled, compostable or reusable packaging. So that is very much driving the amount of recyclable packaging that we're tracking, but also the amount of recycled content in plastic packaging has also seen a significant increase, particularly in Europe and specifically the UK, who have got a plastic packaging tax coming into play in April, which means that there will be additional charges on any packaging that has less than 30% recycled content. So what that means is you're getting a number of different packaging formats with at least 30% recycled content. And here we have a fresh fish range with 34% recycled content. And this is from Sainsbury's, which is the second largest retailer in the UK, grocery retailer in the UK. And they've the new initiative sees the retailer recycling rescued plastic from coastlines for its fresh fish packaging range. The move is in conjunction with an organisation called Prevented Ocean Plastic, POP, and it could save nearly 12 million plastic bottles from entering the ocean each year. Sainsbury's fresh fish range will contain, as I said, 34% recycled plastic in its packaging. The packs have been created by Sharpack UK and a company called Bantam Materials, the supplier of the Prevented Ocean Plastic. And Sainsbury's is also doing something with their strawberry punnets to have 80% recycled ocean-bound content. Now, as I said, we've seen lots of recycled content coming to market, but what's particularly interesting about this one is the use of plastic that would otherwise enter the oceans. Of course, if you can prevent it going into the oceans, the material is far more valuable. If it gets water and light damage, then it has very little use as a food recycled material. So this is quite a clever scheme that's going on with Prevented Ocean Plastic. I know they help local communities in terms of job creation and helping the local economy. And we've seen a number of examples of this type. So specifically using plastic that would otherwise enter the oceans through sort of streams and rivers, such like. So the scheme will contribute, apparently this specific scheme will contribute to the creation of almost over 6,500 days of employment for plastic bottle collectors. So it does seem like a win-win in terms of helping the local economy and also helping the environment.
It does. That does sound like a win-win. In the U.S., it bears noting that we don't yet have regulations that are, pushing the hand of brands to make sure they're at 30% or 33% recycled material. We do have companies that are doing it. They're just early adopters of that. One is Zen Water. There's some celebrity backing on this one. But again, it's the first, according to the brand, it's the first 100% certified ocean-bound plastic beverage bottle launched. And every single bottle that you see here, like the example here, prevents 5 bottles from reaching and polluting the ocean. This plastic resin is sourced from a California company called Carbon Light, L-I-T-E, and that specializes in using, processing used bottles into PET grade pellets. And that was an important point that you made, Paul. The degradation that happens to plastic in the ocean renders it, let's say, less than ideal and sometimes unusable for food, any kind of food applications in plastic. Just because it's more brittle, it might be more dried out. No matter what we do with it, its experience or its life is not as valuable as plastic material that has not yet made its way into the ocean, which is what's so important about ocean-bound plastics. Now, defining ocean-bound plastics, you hinted at this, but according to the certifying body, it's a plastic waste that is not collected correctly initially and is abandoned in the environment, where it will be transported to the ocean either by rain, wind, tides, river flow, floods, these sorts of things, and has to be collected within 50 kilometers. It's about 35 miles of the ocean or a major tributary to qualify as ocean-bound plastic. And Paul, you make a great point about developing nations. A lot of this is happening in developing countries that could use the employment, and there are teams of people that are at work in these countries collecting bottles before they get to the point of the ocean, where they're they become microplastics and unrecoverable completely, or the ones that are recoverable are degraded and of lower value. So all really interesting things that are going on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another point about the use of recycled plastic is that it means that in some cases it's actually quite hard to get to a 30% recycled content point. So it's meaning in some cases the format is moving from plastic into other materials, and that is actually accelerating moving plastic into other substrates because it's just too hard or literally impossible to get that 30% recycled content. So I think that's an interesting byproduct of that sort of packaging tax that we're experiencing. And next up is lightweighting. So this is something that has been going on for a number of years, really. So basically, it has a sort of double benefit of improving or reducing environmental footprint through lighter packaging, which has an ongoing benefit in terms of reducing potentially packaging costs. So here we have a Spanish beer brand, Estrella Galicia, and they've launched a new glass bottle for its Caveta Especial beer, which includes a 12% reduction in glass content. So the human eye wouldn't be able to detect such a change, but it has been eliminated. It has been estimated that this will cut the company's carbon footprint by almost 10,000 metric tons per annum. So what would seem like a modest reduction of 12% can actually have quite a significant impact on the environment. The brand identity has been revamped too, as you can see in the visual, and includes packaging with sustainable features such as FSC, Forestry Stewardship Council certified labels, and 100% recyclable board outer packaging created from waste generated at the brewery. So the redesigned bottle will initially be available at over 300 Sainsbury's stores across the UK, but eventually will be rolled out across the board. The redesigned packaging will feature the star used on the original packaging, and it will be available across the whole format. So some of the sustainable examples that we've shown seemingly aren't incredibly exciting. It's not like a new packaging format or a new way of doing things like with reusable packaging. It can just be a standard lightweighting exercise that just moves the dial a little bit further down the line in terms of improving the environmental, reducing the environmental impact of packaging. And here is another good example.
Yes, and even though you're saying this is just a minor thing, a small thing that can make a big impact, that's true. But even these minor changes, these small changes for the bottle shape, for instance, can have a big impact upstream. For instance, these big brands want lighter weight bottles. They definitely want to spend less in shipping the bottles. They want to use less carbon dioxide to do so. But what's the point if the bottle becomes so flimsy or so lightweight that it can't withstand the supply chain and all the rigors of many touch supply chain issues as it goes from distribution to retail to last mile. So even bottle breakage would be an issue in the supply chain. Spirits giant Diageo, they do Bacardi amongst many other brands that I'm sure you'd recognize. We spoke to Dr. Christy McIntyre. She's the head of sustainability at Diageo. This is back in November 21, and she said that they're really looking into different treatments of glass that will enable them to really lightweight and still keep it as strong as possible to go through the high-speed fill lines. So I just mentioned, the supply chain. Well, even further up the supply chain is actually getting the beer or the spirits into the bottle, and how much material, or excuse me, machinery is handling these. It's not gentle human fingers that are handling these bottles as they go through. So there's a delicate tension there between lightweighting as much as possible, but still making sure that these bottles are usable on existing equipment. We remember that Ballisto example earlier on. It's always easier to get a brand on board if they're able to use existing equipment without having to make these massive new capital outlays. Again, this is sustainability that you can do today, not part of this massive long-term strategy. but something that you can do, you can tweak, you can change to make a bigger impact as of today. So the photo that you're looking at right now, this is an older, it might even be 2 or 3 years old, image of an IO, or OI, Owens, Illinois. They do a lot of glass in the United States. But again, you're doing light weighting. They could probably have gone to 50%, but that 50% might not have been able to handle filling in an existing packaging filling and capping line, or it might not have been able to handle all of the touches in the many touch supply chain. So that kind of wraps a bow on everything that we're talking about. There's a lot of different tensions. There's a lot of different pressures coming in all different directions, from the consumer perception to what's practical, what's doable, what can the supply chain handle. All of that is, we're seeing elements of all that and all those different pressures on all of the different packs, new packs and new pack styles that we just saw in the presentation today. And that puts a bow on everything. That brings us to the conclusion of the webinar, all the time that we have. Naturally, if you'd like to learn anything more about what we've discussed or like to discuss more with us, visit the websites that you see on your screen right now. Use the email addresses to contact Paul or I. That's all the time that we have for today. Sustainability Today.